Good morning, Year 12. I'm going to go through this website this morning, which is the one that I want you to analyze. I thought I'd keep myself in the bottom corner because I thought it might make it slightly more personable. Um, Not entirely comfortable with seeing myself on the screen, but these are the lengths that I'm going to go to for you. So I'm just going to take you through, and I'm going to pick out some of the features that I think you could comment on. I will try and look through it. I have prepared. I will try and go through it in terms of layout, graphosemantics, and language. But as you all know by now, these things tend to combine to create meaning. So obviously, if you were given a text like this, or when you're given a text like this for the English A language, we need to comment on it as a whole text. So you need to not ignore things like the logo, the video, the donate today button, because all of these things combine to tell us what the purpose of the text is. So the very first thing actually at the top of the page is this red button. And as we hover over it, we can see that it flashes bright red, and it's very, very visible. And it's very tempting to click because websites are interactive, and the nature of media text on the internet is that it's interactive. And what this reveals to us actually is what the primary purpose of this text might be, which is to donate to this cause. And this cause is fair. And I find this logo quite interesting. Obviously, the acronym is interesting, and the fact that it's called Federation for American Immigration Reform. And if we look at the font and the color of this logo, and then we compare it to the fonts used everywhere else on this page, what I hope you might notice is this uses this very kind of fancy, quite old-fashioned serif font. Why is it doing that? So what's sad about this situation is you're not going to tell me all the things that I haven't thought of. My thinking is the reason that it's doing this is it gives it this kind of official look. It looks like the sort of font that a government agency in America might use. The star like this is very American, and this is trying to appeal to a patriotic audience. So my feeling is that it's trying to look American, it's trying to look official, maybe even like it comes from the American government. I hope you have your own thoughts, and I really hope that you feed back to me under this video because it makes the analysis much richer and much more interesting. And it's the thing that I'm missing most about teaching in this strange, solitary world that we're in at the moment. So then we have underneath this video, and that perhaps also reveals something about the audience of this text. Because the first thing we see before we get to all of this text is this video. So there's clearly some encouragement for people to watch the video. And some of you have talked about analyzing the video, and that's obviously something that you could do. So I'm not going to do that now because I just want to go through the text. But if you've pressed on the video and you've analysed it, I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts. And that's something that I could do at a later point. So if we scroll down, we get here to, well, obviously this is part of a wider dialogue, a wider list of articles on this website. And these tabs at the top, again, are clickable and allow you to continue investigating this issue. So we get to this title, Breaking Point, Border Crisis. It's quite a dramatic title. It's written in this bold sans serif font, so it gives it this kind of very clear, very direct sort of style, and it sets this tone with the blue of this sort of official document, maybe with the navy blue having this sort of authority around it. It's very brief and it's quite dramatic. And you could go to town analysing the use of plosives here with the B, the P, the K, the T, the B here, and the C here. They're quite kind of loud, plosive, dramatic sounding words. Breaking point, border crisis. And it kind of assumes that the reader recognizes that this is an issue. So what's interesting often about these texts is the audience that they create. They kind of assume a problem, and that makes it seem more real. So even if you came to this and you didn't think there were issues with immigration, when you read this, you're basically being told straight away that there is a problem, a crisis at the border. That's a very dramatic, hyperbolic word, and that something is going to break. Um, and we have this quotation here from this Customs and Border Protection Commissioner. What does a quotation do? Well, it's authoritative. It it's authoritative. It has a feeling of, somebody who's genuinely on the ground, somebody who's seeing it every day. They're voicing an opinion, so it makes the text seem more reliable, more honest. And I think part of the tone of this text is it's very much about ordinary people. So he's an ordinary guy. Um, he's a Customs and Border Protection Commissioner. He knows what it's like and where it's at, and he's down on the ground. So I think this quotation here is important, and obviously it echoes the title, and it suggests that the title has come from news on the ground. And again, it's suggesting it's honesty, and it's and that they've gone down and they're investigating what's really going on down there. Okay, then we have this big black box, and obviously this is a site that's trying to recruit people and persuade people to join their cause. So we have the use of synthetic personalization with a direct address of you. The word join is the verb that invites us to kind of join together. Um, Fight, it's this language, and the lexical field of war is used all the way through this, as if this is this battle that we're fighting, obviously connected with border, because in wars and in fights we often protect our borders. So it's sort of making a subliminal connection between migration problems and this idea of war, the idea that we're being invaded, which is very controversial. Right. There is so much to say. I'm just going to scroll down very quickly and have a look at the layout. So we have this introductory paragraph here, which sort of sets out the problem, and I'll come back and have a look at the use of language in there. And then we have this kind of list of five ways Congress can solve the border crisis. So what this seems to suggest is that there are some very simple, 5 simple steps, like if you're building a piece of IKEA furniture, and we could solve the border crisis. We're not addressing the border crisis. We're not trying to resolve the border crisis. We're very sure about our capacity to solve the border crisis, and that's there in bold capitals. And it's broken down for us in 5 easy steps. So it suggests that this is a simple thing that Congress just can't do, and perhaps that I would suggest that that's an oversimplification of what's probably a deeply complex problem. So we have these 5 steps, and they're put for the reader in 5 coloured boxes, which I think again um, serves to suggest that this is a simple thing to address, because it's been put for us in these 5 attractive boxes. And you might notice that the colour used in these boxes they're sort of pastel colours. They're quite calming, soothing. They're very pleasant to look at. And again, this creates a sort of reassuring tone, and that these are simple problems that could be addressed. So if we have a look, and I think the use of numbering serves to emphasize that idea that this can be done in 5 straightforward steps. We have these 5 imperatives. And number 1 is control the border. So the imperative address sort of has this language of instruction. So it suggests that this is a kind of clear instruction we can give. Control the border. Is obviously a huge thing, but it seems and something that I don't know if we've ever controlled borders anywhere in the world, but it suggests that this is a thing that can be simply done. So the first step is merely to control the border, and it suggests that this is something that's possible to do. Then we have this cap immigration numbers. Number 2, again, use of imperative. Clean up the immigration courts, and that word clean is an interesting verb, because it, I think, has undertones. It's sort of suggesting there's corruption, because if courts are dirty, it suggests sort of criminal activity. And we see the semantic field of criminal activity being used again and again through this. And if you did your reading, as you were supposed to do, you will know that actually immigration is not illegal. It's actually a civil crime, it's not a criminal crime. So the assumption of criminality and the implication of criminality is actually misleading. Cut the job magnet. And this introduces this website talks about things like job magnets, also chain migrations, and it introduces this sort of lexical field like this um, of kind of immigration jargon. So it kind of suggests, I think, that there's this sort of world out there that we don't quite know about, because I'd never heard of the term job magnet and I'd never heard the term chain migration before I'd read this. So it's a way of creating a sort of presumption of knowledge, like there's this body of research and all of these kind of jargony terms that we're not yet familiar with, that people have been discussing. So again, it presumes an audience, and by doing that, it creates this sense for the reader that you're joining an already established body of people. Close asylum loopholes, and that's the fifth one. So if we have a look just at the beginning here, the first thing that I hope that you noticed was the use of pronouns. So we've got the collective pronoun we being used all the way through. And obviously that makes the reader feel included in this kind of group of people who share similar views. So we've reached the breaking point. But however, if we go further down, we also have this this use of you, and also this almost sort of personification, not almost personification, of Congress. So it's like Congress is this body or this person. Congress has been listening to the special interests and not you, the American people. So it's setting up a kind of us and them thing. Congress is them and they are not listening to you, the American people. So it sort of sets up division between government and the people. And there's the use of the word they. So it's creating this sort of them and us. So you could comment in this first paragraph on the use of pronouns and how the collective pronoun we is used to kind of embrace us all into this world where we're feeling very frustrated by immigration reform. But the use of the pronouns they and you is also used to divide us, the American people, from Congress, the government, as if there's a separation. This is an interesting sentence here. And on May the 30th, a single group of illegal aliens, of 1,036 illegal aliens, simply walked from Juarez. So we have this adverb simply here, and simply suggests that it's easy. And again, this feeling that that this is something that could be easily solved. There's also here a statistic, and as you might have noticed, statistics are used all the way through. At no point are we given the opportunity to verify these statistics. We're just expected to accept them as fact. But statistics lend, again, authority and credibility. We live in a world where numbers sound like people have done their research, and we place a lot of store and respect in research. They sound scientific, they sound mathematical, they sound knowledgeable. This is the language of knowledge. And then there's this word, which obviously I hope that you all noticed, of illegal aliens. And aliens is obviously a dehumanization of the immigrant community. It suggests that they are not human, that they're very, very different from us. And actually, the greater divide that's been created in this text is the text between us, the American people, and these aliens who are trying to penetrate our borders. Penetrate's an interesting word too. So I'm going to take you through the first box. We have here huge monetary figures being bandied about. So obviously the suggestion is that immigration is very expensive for the American people, and we're having to kind of shoulder the financial burden. Human and drug traffickers are being highlighted, which again serves to support this idea that um, that immigration is a criminal issue, whereas actually human and drug trafficking is perhaps a separate issue to immigration. It's obviously intertwined with immigration, um, but these are not the only people who are crossing American borders. The word exploit here and weak suggests to me that there is a weakness in the American system that is being taken advantage of by unscrupulous aliens, people from abroad. Um, the use of quotation marks here around humanitarian needs suggests that this is in some way not a real thing, maybe. It sort of undermines this idea of humanitarian needs. And again, the use of adjectives here: irrelevant, politically inspired investigations. Um, I assume that this is referring to reports of unreasonable force or maybe corruption at the borders. And this is being dismissed here by this adjective, irrelevant and politically inspired, suggests that when the government is investigating reports of criminal activity, they're not doing it because they're genuinely interested in making the world a better place. They're doing it out of some sort of cynical motivation and grasp for power. Um, You could also notice as well, actually, that the sentences are very straightforward. The paragraphs are very short, which tells us something about the audience. This is trying to the reach of this, I think, is quite wide. I think its appeal is quite general and it's quite straightforward to read. If you compare it to, say, some of the articles we've looked at in the Guardian, maybe in the New Yorker, it's written in quite the syntax is quite simple and straightforward, and it makes it a very easy document to read. Um, we also have a lot of declarative sentences. For example, and drug traffickers will continue to exploit our weak border without sufficient funding for the agents and agencies on the front lines. So there we have, this is the language of war again with front lines. But we have a lot of these declarative statements that just state things unproblematically. This is the way things are. And so we have this very kind of certain tone, which again serves to lend authority to the text. Um, so here again, we have the criminalization of migration. There are no consequences for breaking immigration law. And it again makes it sound like the people who are coming over the border are criminals, and they are exploiting a weakness in the situation. Here we have, there must be a set enforceable cap. This is a modal verb, must, and it adds to this high level of certainty and this high modality of the text. And we have must again here. They must prevent any further amnesties. So it creates this kind of insistent tone all the way through. And it has this kind of legal use of language all the way through, which again lends it authority, and this sense that the people who are writing this, the writer knows what he's talking about. So merit-based immigration system, clear standards and limits on those permitted into the country every year. It also sounds very reasonable, that use of merit-based immigration system. Doesn't explain what a merit-based immigration system is, but the idea of merit, we adhere as a society to the idea of meritocracy, of people being rewarded for behaving and achieving well. So this kind of makes it sound quite benign and reasonable, and in line with the dominant ideologies within which we live in the West. We're very used to achieving things on merit. Again, we have here these really high numbers. suggesting that the government is being overloaded. We have the use of the word illegal again here, which to describe a person as illegal is very problematic, and it suggests that they have no right to existence. Again, it's preying on this fear of that there's too many people, that we're being overcrowded, and again, with the money here, it suggests that the American people are shouldering the burden. This mention of the unaccompanied minors is again problematic. This is a big humanitarian crisis, as I'm sure many of you know, and I think in this context, it's serving to suggest this idea that the people who are facilitating migrations are entirely unscrupulous and not looking after their children properly, because they possibly weren't unaccompanied, though we can't tell when they arrived in the country. So here we have this word jobs magnet, which suggests that people are coming over because they're drawn to the jobs. Anyone who knows anything about the American economy does understand that there is a huge that migrant workers carry a huge amount of the workload in America, and it suggests here that they're kind of attracted to it in a way that's slightly beyond their control, because the word magnet you get this image of things being sort of pulled in, and again it reinforces this idea that the border is out of control, that people are kind of being dragged across it by some physical force. Again, use of must here, mandatory e-verify, and again the adjective unscrupulous, which suggests this sort of criminalization of people who in any way engage in supporting or helping to continue the issue. And again, illegal aliens, illegal workers. Here we have words like visa and e-verify, and we have these terms which lend the text authority, makes it sound like they know what they're talking about, that they have a knowledge of visa programs, and any kind of facts and statistics that you read and you're not entirely sure what they mean. You could assume that most people won't. And there is here again no links and no way of finding out more about the information that's being presented to us here. And you can go through here and you can find similarly the Flores Agreement. There's no link. There's no way of finding out from this text more about the Flores Agreement. And again, the continuation of must all the way through, and these imperative verbs introduce application fees, expand the ability to return asylum seekers to safe third countries. That's interesting, not to return asylum seekers to their own countries, but to safe third countries, which are countries which hold on to migrants while they await processing, and quicken the adjudication process. So again, we have this list, which makes it sound like this is quite a simple thing to achieve. We have this use of imperative verbs, which creates a tone of urgency, and we have this kind of satisfying ensure migrants who do not qualify for protection will be promptly removed. So again, it makes it sound like this very simple, systematic process that could just be introduced if only the government had the political will. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Could you feed back to me, and I will be back. I can make more of these if they are useful to you. Bye-bye. Hope you're enjoying your weird isolation.